Hi, friends. Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Here's what we're discussing today. Well, it's cold out today, so I'll apologize for having on this long sleeve plaid shirt, but I guarantee you that I'll be more comfortable making this video being warm. Today I want to talk about something that I think is important, what it takes to create a business or make it as a successful professional. And what I'm going to talk about here is as applicable to a plumber as it is to a brain surgeon. And the people you surround yourself with are going to determine your success. Never forget that. Now, maybe you're in med school, or maybe you're in law school. Maybe you're finishing up your CPA. Perhaps you're thinking about setting up a plumbing business or an electrician's business. Maybe you just have skills that would allow you to work independently in your own business. And you're wondering what it takes to make a successful business and get the right employees. Well, in this video, I'm going to try to lay out some of the things that I think you need to consider. And I'm going to do that in the context of setting up an office, in my case, what I know most about for a professional. Along the way, we'll deal with a few war stories and I'll point out some of the ways that it's possible to fail. Now, the approach I'm going to talk about here will work with a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant, a business consultant, a psychologist, pretty much anybody who wants to work at a profession and needs support staff. Now, doctors get a little bit of special dispensation from some of this because they do a residency, and a residency tends to prepare them for having their own practice a lot better than law school prepares a lawyer, or for that matter, most other professional degrees. When I got out of law school, I did not know what it took to be a lawyer. I knew all of the law I needed to know, but I had no idea about what the processes were of getting everything done, filing a lawsuit, doing the discovery, getting the mediations done, that sort of thing. And so, by virtue of doing this residency, doctors get a chance to treat patients, and they have people who have a great deal of experience there working with them, so they have some immediate backup if they goof up, and that's very important. So before you ever think about hanging out your own shingle as a professional, you need to consider going to work for somebody else. Now, this is important for several good reasons. Everything you think you know about being a fill in the blank here, electrician, lawyer, doctor, chemist, whatever, is probably wrong. Maybe not everything, but the important things. When you go into a successful office practice like a doctor's office, the very first thing they do is collect your copay. Now, maybe that seems cold, but if the doctor can't pay his help, he can't stay open. And money is a very big part of that. It's not the most important part, but it is a part of that. So, one of the most fundamental lessons I learned as an attorney was that no matter how good the screening process was for employees, other associates, that sort of thing, no matter how great the money was, how well paid people were, and no matter how ethical you think someone is, they can always surprise you. The first job I had after my clerkship was in a Kansas firm, and I was invited to the Christmas party. And when I got to this Christmas party, it seemed more like a wake than a Christmas party. Although no one said much about it, one of the named partners had just left the firm. He hadn't actually been left, but that's what we were told. He had been fired by the other partners. He had embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars over several years, stealing client settlements, telling them that they'd lost their case when in fact he had gotten them a settlement. In some cases, a hefty settlement. He signed their names to the releases and pocketed the money to feed his drug habit. The firm had a policy that all of the mail went through the office accounting person. So the office accounting person would go downstairs, open up the mailbox, pick the mail out of it, and take it back to her desk, and she'd sort it. And if it was case related, she'd send it to the secretaries, and if it was financial related, she'd keep it. In this way, or so they thought, they had a good check on where the money was coming into and knew that it could not be taken, and that nobody could take the money before everybody saw the money. But there are some people who just understand how vulnerable and easily led people can be. The lawyer, we'll call him Jed, knew that the lady who handled accounting had a bad set of knees and that she absolutely hated walking downstairs to get the mail. And she had to do that periodically because the stairs were always open, but the elevator was hit or miss. Pretty much, you'd wind up sometimes waiting 10 minutes for the elevator. So he bravely volunteered to go get the mail for her. He'd take the key, go down, get the mail, bring back the key and the mail, and nobody thought anything about it. But when the checks would come in from the firms that he was expecting checks from, he'd pull the envelope and take the mail and stick it in his shirt, and he'd give the rest of the mail to the accountant. Because he had closed the cases on the computer system and because he had never told anyone they were settled, nobody knew what was actually going on. He was signing those checks, depositing them, and he wasn't even paying taxes on this stuff. I mean, it was basically free money. The firm was having to pay taxes on some of it, but not him. This guy was a rising star. Everybody talked about what a great lawyer he was. But when the thefts were discovered, as he probably knew they would be at some point, he confessed, he surrendered his law license, and he moved to California for treatment of his drug problem. And eventually he went to work for a big computer company out there. Now, the problem was that this solved the problem of him being in the firm and stealing money, but it didn't solve the problem for the partners who were now on the hook for what all those plaintiffs had lost. And so they had to call these people and tell them that this guy had stolen their settlement and that they should contact a lawyer and make plans to sue the firm. They notified their insurance company. The insurance company did what insurance companies do and worked to help mitigate the damages. But eventually, this took a huge chunk of the partner's income for several years to get all of this stuff paid off. That can be pretty daunting. In fact, the internal accounting controls that should have been in place had been completely bypassed. Well, guess what they don't spend a lot of time on in law school or medical school or any other professional school? Internal accounting controls. And so there is a lot that you don't know. So if you're going to open your own office, you have to know who is going to pay you, how they're going to pay you, when they're going to pay you, and how you are going to pay your bills. If you work for someone else, you can learn by watching the way the office operates, the best ways and sometimes the worst ways to handle the business side of a professional practice or any kind of business. Here's the other thing that's not always obvious, I guess. When I was an associate, I was given a bonus the first year of only $1,000, which the general belief was that bonuses for associate attorneys ought to be upwards of somewhere between $5,000 and $25,000. And so $1,000 seemed to me like a pretty bad slap in my face. I'd been working 70 to 90 hours per week, 6 days a week. I felt I was owed more. The partners quickly told me that if they weren't bringing the business in, I would have had nothing to do. So take your money and shut up. Well, that's pretty hard to swallow, but every year, the second week of December, those guys sat down for a partners meeting. And in this partners meeting, they divided up the money and wrote bonus checks to themselves and to the staff. The meeting always took on the air of a negotiation between Hamas and Israel. They were at each other's throats. They hated one another for that day. It seemed like everybody wanted a piece of somebody else's action. And in spite of that, they managed to get along and they managed to stay together. These are the guys who had partied together throughout the year, and they're at each other's throats in this meeting. And then after it's done, hey, everything's forgiven, and you go back and you have a Christmas party. Well, they had a complex formula for dividing the proceeds. Nobody really knew who was entitled to what. And so at the end of the day, I guess what they did was equitably divide everything into thirds or quarters, whatever it was. I didn't really like the way things worked at that firm, and I thought that for the most part, the people that I worked with were not particularly good people. They were very ugly to some of the staff. Yeah, but then again, they had staff that had been with them for 10 or 15 years. So maybe it was possible that I didn't understand what was going on. In spite of the fact, I worked for two of the three partners there, and two of the three partners are still there. One of them passed on, and one of them moved on and founded his own firm, and the one that died during COVID. Like I said, I don't have warm and fuzzy feelings about the firm, but perhaps I should tell you that I have befriended, or perhaps refriended, the most irascible of those partners. He's not such a bad guy when he's not your boss. But he taught me a very valuable lesson. He said, you see this from your perspective, but I have you, two other associates, four secretaries, four paralegals, and the managerial staff, and I have to pay all of those salaries. I'm carrying those people around on my back. I have to bring in the work. And yeah, that probably looks like a lot of fun to you when I'm out there playing golf and going to parties. But that's how business is done. You can't devalue it, because without it, you wouldn't have a job. It's really hard to hear some of these brutal truths sometimes, but when you are at the top of the food chain, it appears to be, a pretty good gig. You go out and you round up business for the business. But in fact, you are carrying a number of families on your back, and it is a load and a stressor that is difficult to really convey in adequate terms. So at the end of the day, they were right. I was privileged to work in the firm and share in their spoils, and it taught me a valuable lesson. But not nearly as valuable as the lesson as the one I learned next. They decided that I wasn't working out because I complained too much, and because I told them that they needed to reorganize their office because they kept trying every case like they tried the last one. So they told me that they thought I really ought to go open my own firm and try these methods and see how they worked. So because they didn't have any other option, because they fired me, I opened my own firm and I tried to get cases, I advertised, I went out and spoke to civic groups. Pretty much the only people I could get were the people who were turned down by other lawyers. In one notable case, a man who told me that he wanted to sue the aliens. And I said, do you mean the illegal aliens? And he said, no, the aliens from that spacecraft that came down and picked me up and did experiments on me. I explained to him that we couldn't get service on the aliens if he couldn't tell me where they were, and apparently they were in outer space now. It is amazing to me how somewhat odd the entire world can be when you are trying to keep your life together and make ends meet. So I did that job for about 3 months before I decided that I needed to go back and have stable income. And I did that. I found a job with the state of Missouri, and I did that for about 8 months before I found the job that I currently have. So this is the important lesson. Financial failure is always an option, even if you have good funding. I started my practice with over $50,000 in the bank, and I couldn't make it more than about 3 months, basically because, well, money goes out the door a lot quicker than it comes in the door sometimes. And I found out that the worst boss I ever worked for was me. So here's my suggestion. If you work in a business and you think you're ready to go out on your own, think about the person you like best in the business. Maybe it's your secretary, your paraprofessional, maybe the woman who answers the phone. Who knows? Any of those people. Maybe it's somebody you really like. Now you have to choose between paying her and paying your bills. One of you has to go. Could you fire that person that you really like and feel okay about it? Because if you can't, you are not ready for the hard realities of running a business. Summarized, here are the things you need to do if you want to build your business. First, you identify a niche that you can fill. For me, it's been working as an appellate lawyer. For you, maybe it's installing floors and tiling. Whatever the niche is, you have to be able to fill it, and you have to be good enough at it that people will be willing to pay you for it. Next, decide on your workspace. Maybe it's a home office like mine here. Maybe you need a place to meet clients. Maybe you need someone to answer phone calls. There are all kinds of business starters out there that can help provide both office space and staff, including answering services, for a set fee. In many cases, it's wise to go out and hire a consultant or a business advisor. Doctors can often find practice managers who assist them in setting up a medical practice. Don't be too proud to ask for help. Don't be too proud to ask for advice. If you are, a doctor, go talk to other doctors. Obviously, it'd be good if you didn't talk to people you were competing with, but go talk to other people who are doing what you want to do. Next, I mentioned before, it is the people you hire who are going to be either the biggest benefit or the worst detriment to your business. So you have to set high standards. You have to have a written code of conduct. People have to sign on to that at the very beginning of their term of service. And it has to be very clear that if anybody violates that code of conduct, they're out the door. Never allow anybody that you hire to be ugly to one of the people who is going to be paying you money. If you have a client and somebody in your office is rude or curt with them, interdict that behavior quickly, and if you can't stop that behavior, you have to fire that person. Pay people fairly, but watch the hours and make sure you're getting the value from their work. A lot of times people will knock off at 4 o'clock and get paid till 5 o'clock. If you quit working at 4, you got to quit paying them at 4. Watch the hours. Make sure you're getting the value from their work. And many times you'll have a person that everybody in the place loves. Just the most wonderful person you could imagine. And they're also the person who screws up the majority of the time. These are people who can kill a business. And you have to be the kind of person who won't let that happen. Sometimes you have to fire the person that everybody loves. And yeah, it makes people mad, but at the end of the day, it is a better decision than allowing them to ruin your business. The next thing, buy insurance. There are dozens of scammers out there just waiting to trip over the door frame in the way coming into your office. A good insurance company and a policy that is tailored to fit your business needs is an absolute must. If you have company cars, you have to have company car insurance. It's very important. Now, if you're going to hire professionals like other doctors, other lawyers, other plumbers, get a background check first. You get them to sign a release to allow you to do a background check, and you call one of the many private investigator firms that offer these kinds of services, and you run the background check. And what you find will be very important, because many times, particularly people who bill themselves as bookkeepers, are accountants who lost their license because they were caught embezzling. So you have to check people out. If you didn't grow up with them, you better be careful about hiring them. You need to call every employer that they worked for. Make sure they can do the job and make sure they're honest, because it's far easier to not hire someone than it is to fire them after you've hired them or fire them after they've cost you $100,000. Finally, listen to the people who are closest to you. Get good advice and then take it, because it is important to have a number of people around you who can tell you when you need help. A lot of times, people close to you will say, look, you need to take a break. You need to go on vacation. You need to take a few days off. Listen to those people, because burnout is a real thing, particularly when you're at the top of the food chain. Nobody sees it. It's like the phrase that heavy is the head that wears the crown. That's because the responsibility that comes with being the guy in charge is sometimes a lot more than you ultimately wind up wanting to bear. I found out I make a better employee than boss, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because I found my niche and I'm happy in what I do. If you can say that at the end of the day, then sooner or later you are going to be successful in what you do. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. Like, share, subscribe. You know all the stuff we ask you to do. You can also email me at the address above. If you have the opportunity today, do something nice for someone. Maybe give somebody some positive feedback. I went to the doctor's office today and I told the doctor that his medical student who greeted me first was a tremendous ambassador for his practice. It never hurts to give compliments to the people who are in staff positions, because most of the time when the doctor or the lawyer or anybody else hears about those employees, it's about that rotten employee of yours who said something I didn't like. It is rarely about, man, that person really took good care of me. So I always try to tell people when people take good care of me. That's what I have for you. Thanks again for watching, and I hope that you will take the time to catch me down here at the beach again tomorrow. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.